Another morning rises over Wiyoh Falls. A patch of land has been cleared overnight, preparing the canvas for what comes next. And what comes next, I hear you say, my incredible peeps? Well, it's the infamous Norma's motor inn, or soon to be infamous, that is. While all of this is happening, things are running smoothly over at the Angler's Hook. The shop just opened, and Hank is still hard at work scrubbing the graffiti from the alley behind. So while he's not suspecting a thing, let's focus on the task at hand. I wanted you to join me as I build a Sleazy Motel. Welcome back, folks. Let's dive into another episode of the Polygon Vault Architecture Series. Okay, so this episode starts off strong with the blocking of the motel. I have three main buildings in mind, arranged in a U shape with the parking spots right in the middle. You know, kinda like this. Back in the day, motor inns were a common sight along highways. They were small, practical, and cheap, usually just a handful of rooms where travelers could pull right up to the door, spend the night, and be back on the road in the morning. Most of them had a little reception and maybe a vending machine or a diner attached, something like that. Well, in Wiyoh Falls, that role is filled by Norma's motor inn. Norma inherited the place when her mother passed away and her father could no longer take care of it. She renamed it after herself to give it a warmer, more welcoming touch. Now in her 60s, she's been running it alone for years. Her husband's been in prison for as long as anyone can remember, and it shows. Because she's tough, independent, maybe a little hardened, but she keeps the lights on for anyone who needs a room. I'm still focusing on the main shape here. This build was a lot of trial and error. The motel went through plenty of changes along the way before I finally landed on a layout I was happy with. Once I had the main layout finished, I decided to split it up into separate units for each room. I ended up with 7 rooms and a reception. Eventually, I want to model each of them and give every room its own vibe and personality. But interiors are a whole different challenge, and I'll save that for another video. I'm adding this little section for the bathroom, extending out from the rooms. And here is the placeholder for the motel sign on the rooftop. I wanted to position it right in the middle so every passerby can see it clearly. Next, I added the support poles along the front porches, shamelessly ripping them from the Angler's Hook. Like I said, a lot of what I built didn't make the cut. Here I was experimenting with a little driveway area where guests could pull up, park for a moment, and head inside to register for the night. I didn't really have this space, so yeah, that idea ended there. In the end, I split the structure into 3 separate buildings, but kept the overall U-shape. After a number of different iterations, the main shape of the buildings was, finally starting to take form. Then I adjusted the support poles to give them a more distinct look. I experimented with a 45 degrees side beams, but it ended up feeling way too much like a barn, so I scrapped that as well. Alright, time to model the fence that, separates the parking lot from the entrances to the rooms. I kept it simple, just 2 horizontal beams with a vertical post in between. Ooh, that's funky. Once I was happy with the room units individually, I merged them together into a single building. Since it's always a good idea to recycle geometry, I just reused the doors and windows from the angler's hook once again, just like I did with the beams. Hey, I just want to take a moment to say we've officially passed 500 subscribers. 540 to be exact. The growth has been insane, and I couldn't be happier with how this project is going. To all the Wiyoh Falls residents out there, that's you guys, thank you. Seriously, I mean it. Alright, pretty simple shape still. Took me forever, but this is where we're at. So now let's add a concrete pad, basically a sidewalk running along the doors. Let's clean up any unnecessary faces along the way, just to keep the geometry nice and tidy. As a modeler, that's a good habit to have. And finally, I threw in the windows all the way around. Now it's starting to feel complete. Since I started animating my characters and learning more about video editing and all that good stuff, and now that we have more and more environments to work with, I feel like I'm getting closer to being able to create little animated shorts that feel like, video games. I don't just want to build a town of Wiyoh Falls. I want to tell its story too. So yeah. Keep an eye out for that. Who knows? Maybe you'll even see a full-length movie someday. For the lucky guests staying on the edge rooms, they get a bonus window. And this is the small bathroom window at the back. Cleaning the topology again. I took care of copying the details of the annex, that's the building I was working on, over to the main building and the reception off camera. But now it's time for one of the biggest highlights of the project, that infamous Rooftop Motel sign. It's just some text, using the font I chose, that, I gave it third dimension. I went ahead and added some support beams to the sign. Pretty straightforward, really. And that's the geometry sorted. Let's throw it into Unreal and take a look.
Kids news. Kids
Jesus, okay. While Hank's recovering from his injuries, let's move on to texturing. Oh, hope he's alright. So, I wanted the walls to have a solid stone base, with beige or off-white plaster on the top half. For the roof, standard dark gray tiles with dirt and grime building up in the gaps. Picked out a good concrete texture for the small sidewalk here. And then I reused the wood plank texture from the angler's hook. At this point, is there anything I didn't take from that build? I went with vintage colored doors for the rooms. That classic yellow and blue that just screams the 60s. I figured it'd give the place a unique vibe. I then added some pretty standard windows all around. And then I figured I'd add a little extra touch by putting door numbers on each of them. And then I started texturing the roof sign. To me, a UV sheet is like real estate. You should use as much of it as possible, ideally 100%. Otherwise, it's just wasted space. And yeah, before you say it, I am leaving some space here. Guilty, but it's for a reason. I'll be adding more texture to this UV sheet later, so it's all part of the plan, eventually. And that's it for this week, guys. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. It was a lot of fun to put together. The motel's looking a bit bare bones right now, but we'll be adding Norma's character model and a bunch of new assets to bring it to life later on, that's for sure. So stay tuned. This is the little reception, by the way. I wanted it to look a bit different from the rest of the build, so I gave it a unique door. And I'll also be adding some, signs and other assets to make it stand out. Oh, and I finally set up a Patreon, so if you want to help me grab a coffee a month, consider subscribing there too. The link's in the description. So that's it. Love you all, my incredible peeps, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.